They have to show you, oh, this is who Jesus is, what he means, what he meant by this. And through that, believe it or not, the byproduct is you feel better. Because once you start to get closer to God, closer to Jesus, then you're like, oh, this is what it's all about.
So I guess like community is such an important piece. So how would you recommend somebody find a good church?
If you're struggling to find a church, here are 4 steps to picking the right one. Step one, they preach Christ and him crucified. So in First Corinthians chapter 2, verse 2, Apostle Paul writes that he only focuses on Jesus and him crucified, because the crucifixion, without that, we don't get to heaven. So Jesus Christ has to be number one always, right? Step two, they must follow the Bible and what we call sound doctrine, sound biblical doctrine, meaning all sermons, all lessons, all speeches, all fellowship has to point back to Jesus Christ. So whether it's a story in the Old Testament, a parable, symbolism, whatever it is, it has to point back to Jesus Christ.
Can you give me an example of when a story doesn't?
So when it becomes a motivational speech where someone goes, Jesus really loved me and he gave me the heart to go and give to money to homeless people. So you guys got to give money to homeless people. That's not, you're peppering in Jesus, but that's not the actual thing,
Mm.
right? It's like, whereas something that points back to Jesus is, hey, I judged this homeless person and I thought giving him money was going to save him. But I realized what truly saves him is the gospel of Jesus Christ. So instead of giving him money, not only did I do that, I preached the gospel to him as well and invited him to church. That's different,
Makes
right?
sense.
And then step three is this church will always encourage you to grow and be accountable in front of God. So that means they're not gonna just fit your lifestyle. They're not just gonna sit there and like mold to you. They kind of have you kind of mold to the will of God, right? A lot of churches nowadays are molding their church to like fit the vibe and not fit the message of God, right? So it's you got to be cautious about that. Step four, the church will equip you always for evangelism and discipleship. And what this means is not just for entertainment, but they push you to preach the gospel to other people. They push you to set other souls free, like your soul was set free. They push you to walk, to be able to show other people, hey, this is what Jesus did for me and what he can do for you. So that's very, very important. And so those are the 4 steps to finding the right biblical gospel centered church. All right.
Right.
So most people, I just wanted to touch up on this, tend to find a church based off of their comfort zone rather than like conviction from God, rather than, growth with God, right? They love to be like, oh, that church was nice. Why do you go to your church? Very rarely do you hear them say, because they preach a good, sound biblical gospel.
Mm.
Gospel's not even in the equation. Well, it's really nice. My kids love it.
Got a great
Oh, it's
worship team.
great worship team. I feel the spirit when they sing. It's like, it's all honestly not a bad thing, but it's all comfort, right? So we have to choose conviction rather than comfort. The church's sole purpose is to not make you feel good. It's to show you Jesus Christ clearer, basically. They have to show you, oh, this is who Jesus is, what he means, what he meant by this. And through that, believe it or not, the byproduct is you feel better. Because once you start to get closer to God, closer to Jesus, then you're like, oh, this is what it's all about. And you feel almost like a sense of belonging and love and relationship with God. A lot of people nowadays, their churches are changing. So the Bible tells us in Second Timothy chapter 4, verse 3-4, that there's going to be a time where people don't want sound doctrine anymore. They want fairy tales, literally, right? So I think you have to first double check, is the change bad or not? Right? So maybe the change is not a bad thing. It can be going to good
Mm.
things. And how do you know that? So like new songs, worship, different styles is okay. It's okay. But most importantly, is the change pushing you towards Jesus Christ or is it pushing you away from him? Right? That's the number one thing. Is it focusing on the gospel or is it focusing on works now? Is it, bringing like you closer to Christ, or is it more of a motivational speech for you to make money, for you to find community and like, business and things like that? So you have to focus on the gospel. And then a lot of people then ask, okay, if my church is kind of going corrupt, where it's becoming more of the world, it's becoming more accepting of like politics and like you know, all these other communities and things
Yep.
that go directly against the scripture, then what do you do? Right. So, number one thing you guys got to do when that's happening is pray. Right. That's the one thing Pastor Kim has taught us was like, you have to be a true prayer warrior. And that means going to God about this. So, when you pray, you have to ask God for one thing. God, please show me, is the changes in my church spirit led, like Holy Spirit led, or is it man led? Like, does a person just want to fill their pews and like make everything full? Or are they trying to fill people's hearts with the gospel? There's two different type of filling. A lot of people, sadly, nowadays they want to fill their seats. So they do everything to get people to come and they mold Christ's message to their lifestyle versus having people change their lifestyle for Christ. It's this thing, right? It's a clippy, by the way. And then also the second thing is you have to ask questions to your leadership. So if you feel like there's changes, you have to ask, hey, I noticed this, voice your concerns. Am I wrong for thinking this? And they should be able to have a dialogue. But if they're like, no, you're questioning me, you shouldn't be doing that, you don't know anything about this, like that's not okay. Because clearly there's something wrong. You're not just gonna randomly like, and I hope you guys don't just randomly judge the church. Rather than judge, observe, and then bring your observations to them and see what they have to say. Right. Have dialogue with them.
Mm.
Right. And then understand one thing, that don't be discouraged that if you went through all of these and you realize that your church has changed, understand something. Churches will change. Churches become corrupt. But remember that Jesus Christ never changes. That's why you have to focus on the message of Christ, not the message of the church. First and foremost, you got to understand that like church is not Christ, right? So it represents him, but it doesn't mean that it doesn't have flaws, right? So there are sadly a lot of people who opened up to the church and they opened up to the wrong person because clearly that person gossiped about them or, you know, like you say, buried them, right? But just you have to understand, right? If they're doing that, it is probably a time for you to leave because any person who opens up, they should lead you back to Christ. They shouldn't lead you to condemnation and shame and guilt. Like that's just judgment. So acknowledging that people will sit there and fail you, that's normal. People betrayed Jesus, spoke lies about him. He took people in and they turned on him like Judas. It is all part of the Christian walk, believe it or not. Every one of us has shared our hearts with pastors and trusted them to some extent, or leadership at least. Maybe not directly a pastor, but the church leadership. And we've been done wrong. Even in my own church, I've been done wrong by other leaders who are no longer in that church. But that doesn't mean that that church, whole church is corrupted. It's more of like we got to stop looking at people's failures and then attributing that to God and God being a failure, right? So
Mm.
people change, people will disrespect, but Jesus Christ doesn't. So that's why I said it's important to focus on that. And again, all of these things have to happen. As crazy as I had to leave the church 4 times, I had to come back and go, man, I needed to go and see other churches and see if there was anything out there for me. It's all part of it. As long as you return back to Christ at the end of the day, that's the most important thing, right? So if you're feeling like you want to leave, leave. I mean, I know that sounds crazy and controversial, but like it's okay to want to leave because God will still lead as even when you leave, right? So